partnerships and strategy here at JSA. And on behalf of JSA, thank you for tuning in to our first JSA Virtual Roundtable of 2023, Achieving Net Zero Carbon Emissions by 2030, Tackling the Key Partnerships and Technology to Meet the Goal. Such an important topic, and coming off of the biggest PTC conference to date, I can tell you firsthand that this topic is clearly at the forefront of our industry and critically important. And in case you missed it, JSA just launched the Greener Data Directory as part of the Greener Data movement. It's a Rolodex of sustainability-minded companies that serve the digital infrastructure industry, and they're aiming to connect organizations dedicated to getting to net carbon zero throughout global operations. So be sure to check that out at greenerdata.net. A little housekeeping before we begin. As usual, part of our tradition here at JSA, the first 100 people that registered for today's virtual roundtable should have received lunch delivered to their door by now, so enjoy. And if you weren't one of the first, hopefully next time, so be sure to register as soon as you see our events populate here. And we want to hear from you, so we want to make this roundtable experience as interactive as possible. So in that chat box there, please add any questions that you might have, and our panelists will get to those as they have time. And most importantly, be sure to stick around once our roundtable is over today, so you can join virtual networking tables immediately following for a very unique opportunity to talk face-to-face with other event attendees and this fabulous lineup of speakers that we have here today. So simply just join a table in the lounge area and just let the networking begin and get started there. All right, well, before we get to the fun networking part, let's get this show and conversation started. Joining me today, we have a spectacular roundtable panelist here. We have Adam Kramer. He is the CEO at Net Zero. Ashish Verma, the manager of renewable energy policy and international business at Adani Connects, joining us all the way from India today. And in case you missed it, Adani Connects was the winner of the PTC 23 award for Best Startup Organization. So congrats to Ashish and the entire Adani Connects team there. And we also have Andrew Roof. He is the Director of Sales and Marketing at Janitza North America. So now that we gave those introductions, I'm going to let these panelists give us a sneak peek into some of the main strategies that their companies are working on to take the most feasible and effective path to net zero emissions. So Adam, why don't we get started with you?
Yeah, Buffy, thank you so much for having me, and really excited for this conversation today. By background, N0 is a carbon accounting and management company really supporting organizations around the world now on their journey to net zero by helping them to not only understand their emissions in a real-time basis, something that is incredibly important in the telecommunication and data center business, right? Not to look at it on an annual average, not to look at it on a monthly basis, but to look at it on an hourly basis or 15-minute basis. So not only we can support reporting and understanding of the emissions, but to be able to help drive the most cost-effective interventions to reduce that impact for organizations. And we really have specialized a lot inside of the data center and telecommunication industry. Both my background, 10 plus years in the data center industry, along with our team, about 100 plus years inside this space. So really excited to continue this conversation. And I would say, I think your intro in talking about PTC is a great kickoff here, because that was definitely, I think, the transformation or the change from 2022 to 2023 at PTC and the conversations that are happening inside of this industry around net zero, about not just understanding emissions, but getting it granular enough to be able to make decisions about this. And whether it's for your organization as a data center operator, or it's for your customers in the co-location space to be able to do this. It's been really exciting and really honored to be here today.
Yes, we are so honored to have you. And the common theme, at PTC, I had the privilege of interviewing so many thought leaders there, is that we're coming together and we're going to continue to come together to make this happen, to actually initiate the change. And I think that's what is so critical here today. So Ashish, let's turn it over to you.
Yeah. So thank you, Buffy, for having me. I'm Ashish Verma. So I take care of renewable planning and sustainability for Adani Connects. So Adani Connects is joint venture between Adani Group, which is a $200 billion company based out of India, and Edge Connects. So we are planning to develop close to 1 gigawatt by 2030. So we are a fairly new organization, and we recently won the award, which is one of the most promising startup under the PTC award, which is a great achievement for us. And we just started our operations 2-3 months back. In fact, our first data center started live in Chennai in India. So I guess one of the most important topic which globally we see is a net zero by 2030, 2050, 2060. We across the year. In fact, COP27 was one of the promising where global leaders were talking about the climate change, sustainability, all those. At top of the agenda was of every businesses. So obviously the technology and the partnership, which is a two element where we definitely can achieve the net zero by maybe 2030, maybe by 2040, 2050. We depend upon the priorities of the business. So if talk about the Adani Connects, so we are, so as a data center, we are resource guzzler, coming under the resource guzzler industry where consume lot of power, lot of water, lot of other resources also in terms of when we building the data center and operating the data centers. So one of the priority is obviously the renewable energy. We try to consume a lot of 100% renewable power in our operations. Second is water. We make sure that water is one of the unheard conversation, but more precious element in the planet. Without water, we cannot live and we cannot operate, which is second. Third one is resources. We're building the material for the data center, be a cement, X, Y, Z, other material also. So circularity is very important for us. And a fourth one is energy efficiency. So I believe energy efficiency is one of the element where the company should talk about, and in terms of while designing, and then we make sure that we design our data center so that we consume less energy compared, less resources compared to what the market is. So these are the 3-4 priorities which Adani Connects is definitely doing to even achieve the sustainability. In fact, we are the first company across the world which operating in data center. We already implemented our first ESG policy within the 1 year of operations. And we are trying to become operational net zero by 2030 by taking the 24 by 7 carbon free energy, so that every hour of every minute of electron we consume, and it has to be coming either from the solar, wind, pump hydro, or battery storage. So this is basically we are aiming by 2030, which is we already created a roadmap so that our customer and we self-consume clean energy on hourly basis. So look forward for this conversation and conference. Over to you, Buffy.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for giving us all of those insights into what Adani Connects is doing. Very, very impressive and critical. Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Buffy. As Buffy said, I'm Andrew Ruth, the Director of Sales and Marketing for a company called Janitza. Stationed in the North American branch of the company, but we're actually based, our world headquarters is based just north of Frankfurt, Germany. Janitza is an energy monitoring and management company. So we actually manufacture hardware that measures electricity and power throughout a facility. And we also actually have a software that pulls all that information and all that data in that we're collecting from the measurement points, and be able to use that data in a user-friendly fashion throughout our software there. And so energy efficiencies and energy usage is the core of our business, of course. And so with that being our core business, that is also our focus internally as well. Obviously, we're here focused on the net zero, and Janitza has pledged as of last year to be net neutral by 2030. And it seems like it was a natural progression to make that pledge within the organization. We were already working towards that internally. We also help our customers work towards that as well. And so it just made sense for us to make that formal announcement, even though we're already kind of working towards those goals there. I've been with the company for about 2 years now, and it's been a fantastic organization to work with, especially with their focus on not just the consumption of data or consumption of energy, but also down to the level of the efficiencies and how clean that energy is coming into a facility, throughout the facility, and down even to, for a data center standpoint, down to a rack level or server level, and monitoring those energy usage throughout the whole facility there. And so we have definitely a core product that focuses on those efficiencies and being able to make those gains that every organization can have using that monitoring type of level system there. And so I'm happy to be here, talking with everyone here, and look forward to answering some questions here and talk a little bit more about what we're doing at Janitza, and then talking with Net Zero and other organizations that we've worked with in the past, and to see how we all can collaborate going forward here.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for those introductions and giving us a little more insights there. I mean, this is a global conversation, so we have all corners of the world here joining us for this important conversation, and I'm honored to be speaking with you, gentlemen. So thank you very much, and thank you, viewers, for tuning in to this conversation. So let's kick off some questions right over back to you, Adam. Speaking of new technologies, I mean, N0 was selected by Time as one of the best inventions of 2022. I mean, that's a huge, huge accomplishment. Can you tell us a little bit more about the real-time carbon tracking platform?
Yeah, well, and thank you for that. Really was special. You know, what we're doing is kind of, so we're not a hardware provider, right? We're a software company, and we're very agnostic as to the technology. But ultimately, our journey to building the company that it is today started with electricity and understanding what is the carbon footprint of every kilowatt on an hourly basis, based off the grid mix, based off of what renewables you may be buying, and creating a level of understanding that hadn't existed before. And, you know, frankly, you know, we've been really pioneering on a go forward basis, which is, you know, coming out of the data center industry, we were thinking, well, gosh, that's kind of the data we need to understand this, because the world is moving beyond renewable energy credits or geos in Europe, right? They're really moving to understanding 24/7 CFE, carbon-free energy, which includes, of course, all of the renewable systems we've talked about, but also includes nuclear, right? It's about getting into carbon-free production. We're seeing so many advancements in this space. And so what we do is we get down, you know, not just to pulling data from utility meter level, which we're doing on buildings across the world, but, you know, inside of a data center, because of technologies like what Andrew's talking about, is we can go tell you what the carbon emission is down at the rack level, and depending on where you're metered, down at the server level. And being able to actually pull that data in, push it back out through a bi-directional API, and really support our customers in this journey. And of course, that's electricity, and that's overwhelmingly in the telecommunication and data center industry, the largest. Technically, it's an indirect emission source, but it's the largest direct emission source controlled in the space. And then we take that same approach to the other emissions, right? We have inside of it, you know, the common emissions we deal with, refrigerant, right, for our air conditioning, cooling, understanding water impact, not necessarily an emission, but something of really big interest. Whether you're looking in the U.S. and the desert Southwest, where we're seeing more and more restrictions on water usage, especially for data centers, and that's one of the growing growing pushbacks that people are having, in permitting and some of the other requirements, and looking even at maintenance vehicles and understanding the emissions of this. Because at the end of the day, by creating an enterprise-wide view of all of your impact, it gives these organizations the ability to pull levers to understand what that is. So, for instance, if you're an organization in the desert Southwest and you can't do evaporative cooling anymore and you have to go far reduced on this, well, that's going to directly obviously impact the amount of electricity you need in order to offset that. Well, now you have a problem because you're going to be dealing with more carbon potentially from your grid source. So how do you manage that? How do you deal with that? Other markets, it may make more sense, given where it is, to use more water and less light, right? It's understanding this and understanding that you're not going to paint with broad strokes, right? We have to treat each facility separately. And so, we look at edge compute as a great example of that. You deploy edge data centers throughout a country, throughout a state, throughout a city. And they're going to perform differently based off of different attributes, and understanding what levers to pull there to drive that journey to net zero. So really, at the end of the day, what N-Zero is doing is providing this near real time. We say near because it does take some time to true up against grid mix, which is about 24 hours to settle grid mix and get that in there. But it's the closest to real time that exists, period, just because of the actual physics of how it works in market settlements. But to give people that real-time type of data so that they can make decisions, understand what the effects are of operational or capital interventions that they're making to reduce impact, and ultimately empower people on their journey to net zero in a way that's most cost-effective, right? We got to remember, we're all running businesses here. We got to make sure that we're dealing with the environmental impact, which affects all of us, and we have to do it in the way that's most financially responsible for our organizations. And there's a nexus where those two meet.
Definitely, yes. It still is a business, for sure. And, keeping our eye on the cost effectiveness and how we can still achieve these goals is critical. So I wanted to circle back to Andrew as we talk about, all the different corners of the world, with Janitza being headquartered in Europe and Germany. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about some of the technologies that have emerged over the 18 months in that region, to help the industry meet some of these aggressive net zero goals?
Yes, absolutely. So we have two different aspects to look at here with Janitza. One is our own internal company and the carbon footprint that we release from our operations. And then the other part is, what do we do with our products ourselves, and how are we helping other customers and other organizations meet their goals from our products. So internally, we've made quite a few steps in this pledge to be carbon neutral by 2030. Two of the biggest ones that were kind of the easiest to check off. I wouldn't say easy, even I wasn't one doing it, but two of the biggest ones to check off. One was the lighting that we have within our facility. Everything's LED lighting, and I think that's one of the easiest things that companies can step and repeat across the board, is your lighting, and even kind of focusing on what your HVAC systems are. Those are some of the big decisions. Now, not everyone will be in a place where they can change some of those pieces there. Maybe there's specific requirements, but to at least take a step and look at what your biggest energy consumption is. Lighting is one of those. The other big step that we did was the energy we're purchasing from the utilities. And can you change that mindset of purchasing standard power, or can you actually work with your utilities on purchasing renewable power? So we've actually worked with our utility. We're purchasing 100% hydro power within our facilities. So there's quite a few, being in Germany, there's quite a few hydro power stations that we're able to work with. And we're actually pulling in clean energy into our facility. And that offsets a lot of our carbon footprint just from electricity coming into the facility there. And so those are the two of the biggest, and I'd say easiest, but they definitely take some time and some effort and some cost there. But those are some big ones that we made as goals to offset our carbon footprint. And one of the other unique factors about us internally in our organization is we also installed some rooftop solar panels in our facility, in our production facility, in our offices there in Germany. And I think we have about 126 kilowatt hours available of solar, and we're going to be expanding our facilities in the near future. And so we'll most likely be expanding that capability too. And so even if there's ways that you just can't offset or can't reduce the amount of carbon that, let's say, a machine or a piece of your operation, if you can't reduce it just because of the nature of it, then maybe there's ways to offset it. And those solar panels are fantastic ways to do that, to offset some of those required carbon type of energy pieces of your organization there. And so those are some of the big ones. Of course, we have other little pieces that we've implemented in our plan. One of them is we're encouraging our own fleet of vehicles to be electric vehicles, and encourage our employees to get electric vehicles as well. One of the unique things that I thought was actually quite clever of our organization is we actually have a bicycle leasing program for our employees, so that if you have employees near the office and they want to bike in instead of drive in, there's actually some help in leasing bikes for those employees internally. And I thought that was a fantastic idea, just to encourage, well, not only just carbon footprint, but also encourage people to bike into work, and give them a way of accessing those bicycles as well. I thought it was fantastic too. So just want to point out a couple of those pieces there, at least from internally our organization. The other part is our products itself. And so our products, of course, are used for monitoring power usage and the consumption. And we really wanted to keep a focus on what our customers' needs are, especially in this, this new world of carbon, tracking type of scenario. And so we wanted to adapt some of our products and be able to be used for those carbon tracking pieces there. And so using up the energy consumption data points and having that data available for other softwares to collect and use, it was a big part of our products as well. So having the interfaces needed to take the data of consumption and be able to send it to another piece of software is something we wanted to work on. But also some of our software allows us, in fact, we released a new software last year. It's a cloud-based system that actually does count the energy carbon footprint as well. So you can have that CO2 counter as part of our software as well. So as you purchase those software, obviously energy usage is a big piece of that. Your quality of your power is a piece of that, but also you can now count some of your carbon footprint using the software as well. And then, of course, making that data available for other pieces. Not everyone needs that in the energy management system, so that you might need to use that in your building management system, or if you have a third-party software like the nZero system there, you can take that data and use it elsewhere as well. So,
thank you for those insights. I really like the biking idea. I think more and more companies should start adopting different practices like that. Ashish, let's turn it over to you. When it comes to strategic partnerships and driving conversations and pushing the net zero progress forward within the data center space, can you give us some key partnerships examples that you're working on?
Sure. So one of the elements for the data center, be a developer or consumer, is one of the element is the renewable power. So we are closely working with our parent company, Adani Green Energy and Adani Group, where they are one of the largest renewable power developer in the world, and they are into the green hydrogen, battery storage, pump hydro, and all across the value chain of energy. So we are closely working with them to get the 24/7 carbon-free energy kind of structure going forward, because solar and wind is already available, but how you can make scalable and at the cost effective when you utilize the battery storage and the pump hydro in entire value chain of the renewable power solutions. So we're closely working with them. So first leg of action, we started developing our own captive, which is 4.5 megawatt of solar wind hybrid, where we aiming to get a 50% renewable power from day one. In next 6 or 7 months, we will start getting a renewable power. So this is the first leg of action, and we also working with the couple of other industries, leading companies also for fuel cell and the green hydrogen space. so that we also get a clean backup power through the green hydrogen or fuel cell. So in fact, we did a pilot study in Chennai 1.5 years back to get a 3 megawatt of techno commercial study for the fuel cell. So, but the right now what happened, even in fact, the solution is already available, but are economically feasible? So that is one of the challenge. So we have to do a lot of the partnerships, scalability, pilots. Then basically those solutions going to be feasible. But in fact, maybe next down the line 2 or 3 years, as a green hydrogen, the cost is coming down and the fuel cell is going to scalable, and so definitely this is something like as a partnership with the different companies we look forward, especially on the fuel cell and the green hydrogen or the renewable energy, which we already doing with internal companies. So yes, by 2030, if you talk about, yes, we are planning to aim 24 by 7 carbon free energy, which I guess the role of Adam would also come into the picture, where we try over tracing the hourly basis of the energy consumption, and then we make sure that we truly decarbonize the grid, not just offsetting the grid, because ultimately these are two elements. Because what happened even globally, the renewable energy certificates was to offset those the emissions, but as well as the grid is you also getting the other greener product much more economical, scalable. So I guess the 24 by 7 carbon free energy through the partnership and much more authentic, you have to build much more authenticity into the system. How you going to consume, how you going to trace. So I guess we are doing a lot of partnership with our internal team, external team, and we'll make sure that we'll achieve our goal by 2030 with the clear partnership. So this is one of the element, which is the renewable power. Second is water, and water we take very seriously because of the India comes into the water stress area. Majority of out of 33 states, majority of states are water stressed. So in fact, one of the data center where we started operating comes into the water stress area. But while designing 2 years back, our engineering team and the technology team comes together and they thought we should not use any fresh water for data centers. So we operating air cooled chiller for that particular. Although the energy consumption is bit higher, but we make sure that the if you talk about the value of energy and the water, I would personally water is much more valuable compared to the energy, because if you don't have water, you can't generate the energy. So we make sure that the water is something we have to do with the local partners and municipal corporations. So we should not use a fresh water for a data center. So this is the one thing which we're doing with the local partners, especially municipal corporations. In fact, our new data centers are also exploring the partnerships, how we can use the recycled water and then treat the wastewater and utilize the data center in upcoming data centers. So this is one of the partnership which we're doing with the local government level. Third one is the energy efficiency side, where we're doing a lot of engagement with the component manufacturers like your chillers, electrical panels, other things. This is also because of 10 to 15%, they also consume the energy, and then so that our entire power usage effectiveness comes down, and we have to build one of the best data centers. So because on the average globally, the PUV somewhere around floating somewhere around 1.4, 1.45. So we are also aiming to close to around 1.44 going forward. So the partnership, especially the use of energy efficient technology is much more important. Fourth one is a leg of action which we are doing in terms of the waste, because ultimately when your server racks, and obviously you're going to consume a lot of the data in next 7 to 8 years, then we started consuming it. But how are you going to recycle, reuse, and then we make sure that the component should not adversely impact the environment. So there are a lot of you have to work with the recyclers and then the company who are into the recycling business. You have to do a lot of partnership, and you have to educate them. You also get some education so that it could be win-win situation for both the companies and planet also. So these are few things which we are doing. to achieve not just the energy front. We also make sure that the entire value chain of the emission and the sustainability, we make sure that we take care of from day one.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, partnerships are definitely critical in today's market, especially when we're working towards achieving this aggressive goal. Adam, I know that you're working with a lot of JSA clients and other data centers on a partnership perspective. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, thank you. The biggest thing for our work in the data center business is, um, moving into that 24/7, right, is electric grids are dynamic. So when the wind's not blowing, your carbon intensity in an hour may go up, right? When the sun's not shining, same thing. And so that's really, one of the areas as it pertains to electricity that we've really pioneered creating that visibility. And why that's so important is as we work with some of our partners, and I'll mention one by name because he was on one of the last JSA panels we did, which was T5, right, is not only to have T5 be able to understand their footprint, which is really important for them, for their reporting, for their investors, for all of this, but also really more importantly, and this is what we're finalizing right now, is the bidirectional API, so they can get this. As we pull data out at that server level, at that rack, at the rack level, or at the server level, is to be able to put that back in there and show customers. Because when you look at a data center as a building, you may see a 95% load factor, right? So you're not going to see a lot of movement. But when you look at individual compute demands, you're going to see a lot more movement and fluctuation. You're going to see a shift in that load factor, and it's that shift that, today when customers are trying to understand their footprint inside of a data center, they really have to just rely on saying, great, we're going to take the eGrid factor, we're going to take the countrywide emission factor, and we're going to apply that uniformly across our load as it existed for a year. Where we're saying, no, what we're going to do is we're going to help you understand that, I'm on Pacific time, right? At 10 in the morning on January 26th, you drew 10 kW at this rack. Here's what that carbon intensity was at that hour, and why that's so important, and why we love our partners with data centers, and we have quite a few data centers now. We've grown a lot in the last year. I'd say we're the leading carbon accounting and management company in the data center industry. The reason we've grown is because with that data and getting that back to customers, now they can think about how they want to shift load, right, and how they're working on this, because that also becomes very regionally specific. So an example of that is 10 years ago in the data center industry, you'd be like, hey, as much load as you can, shift it to evening hours, because that's going to be the cheapest cost of power. That's when we're going to go run any big batch work we got to do that doesn't have to be done instantaneously. Let's run batch work. Well, now if you factor in the cost of carbon, the desert Southwest, you're going to want to run those batches actually in the middle of the day. One, it's going to be cheaper power. Two, it's going to be anywhere between 30 and 60% more carbon free, right? It's going to be 30 to 60% greener to do it during the day, where I'm in the Northwest, you're going to want to run those batches at night. It's going to make more sense. It's going to be greener. And you're going to have changing factors that affect all of these things on a regular basis, but people can't change what they can't measure. And the irony is it's like we're in the data business, right? Like we talk about buildings, we talk about electricity. At the end of the day, the whole business is about data. And so the more data that we can give to people, not just give them data, right? We don't want to overwhelm them, but give them data that is actually very actionable, right? It's prescribed data. Hey, here's what the data is. Here's the data. Here's what it's really telling you, right? Like, let's translate it. A simple action is going to reduce your footprint by 20% on your compute load. Great. What does that cost me? Nothing. It might actually save you money. And now you're empowered because you know this information. And that's how we're partnering with data centers, is not just to help the data center understand it, but help their customers in the co-location space understand it. And we're doing some really interesting things with some CSPs now too, where we're able to start working all the way down to VMs and to be able to actually understand workloads on that based off of allocation of compute. So it's advancing at a really accelerated pace, and layering in this technology is giving visibility that people haven't otherwise had.
It certainly is moving at a rapid clip, and it's definitely not going to be slowing down anytime soon. The industry surely has changed in the last decade, right? So thank you for all you're doing for all of our data center partners and clients and across the world to help reach these goals and make the world a better place truly. So Andrew, just back over to you. When it comes to the planning and building considerations that are being reviewed when it comes to the data centers, what's going on there, and how are the design and the build and the process, how are all those things being worked on to really help meet these future sustainability goals?
Well, I think Adam really hit the nail on that one. It comes down to the data. One, you have to collect the data or get some kind of way of pulling in some information about your consumption of energy, of water, as Ashish said as well, is an important one. So if you have ways of collecting that data already, and if you're an organization out there or data center that's looking at trying to get your carbon neutral or trying to make a pledge for carbon neutrality, or even just trying to get more energy efficiency, it comes down to having those pieces in place to collect data or at least generate the data on your facility. The other part, as I already mentioned there, is what are you gonna do with that data? How can you take that information and convert that to actual items and information there? So, and that's kind of one thing that Genisa is focused on is as we are planning on new facilities, new corporate buildings, and new setups. There is part of that planning process is taking a step and seeing where can we start plugging in components for monitoring water usage, for monitoring electricity, or do we have enough space on the rooftop to put our HVAC system as well as solar panels? And so those are some of the decisions that companies need to make, and it depends on your environment. If you're a data center that's in Santa Clara, you're not going to have a lot of space to put an on-site solar generation plant. But if you're in Phoenix or somewhere else that has more land, or Dallas, wherever it might be, that has a little bit more land, you might be able to plan to have those power generation stations at your facility on site there. And so that's part of it, some of the planning processes that we've reviewed with our facilities, and it correlates across the board for data centers as well. When you're planning a site, it's important to really take the time to spec out the right location, spec out what you can do with that location, and all the different pieces that come with it. That spot that you're targeting to build your next data center. What can you do with the space that you have, and utilize that efficiency focuses, and utilize some of the new vendors and companies out there that can help you achieve your goals of energy efficiency or carbon neutrality or even carbon negative in that facility. So, like I mentioned, there's other ways to be creative on offsetting your carbon neutrality with helping employees as well. And maybe even focusing on your vendors. And that's another piece that I see in the industry is changing. If you really take a step back and kind of look at what this carbon neutral push is coming from, it comes from very little to no government push right now. This is companies that know that they're using a lot of energy, they're using a lot of consumption, and they want to do something better for the environment across the board. And we're seeing so many companies that we work with as our customers that are making this change themselves. There's no push from the government. It's them making a change by themselves. And so as we see more companies make that pledge and start really taking their carbon footprint seriously, you're going to start having more vendors that you're working with have less carbon footprint as well, and that will help your goals internally. So the vendors that you're working with can also be part of that planning process too.
Yes, agree. I mean, businesses only want to do businesses with other sustainability like-minded organizations in today's world, for sure. So it kind of leads me to Ashish here. You lead policy for Adani Connects. How do you influence policy across your company to accelerate these sustainable approaches?
Oh, I think those are fantastic questions. So without policy, I guess nobody works, right? That is something, because you have to frame something so that the people have to be like following that process. So, like when we started our business in 2020, so we were thinking, we had a discussion with our partners and then ecosystem, our the parent company, our seniors, and our customers also. We thought the policy is which is something we have to implement from day one. And obviously the globally, if we talk about sustainability, the one of the umbrella is the environmental social governance. So we had a discussion with the couple of leading consultant, and then we make sure that the policy has to, from day one, the policy has to well place. So we took the commitment, and then we implemented 6 or 7 months back our first ESG policy. And it has to be make sure that every subject matter expert has to be follow, and then operational team has to implement while operating of those data center. In fact, our approach is not just operations. We also the take sustainability very serious at the day of when hit the ground during the construction and before the designing phase also. So we make sure that every phase of the designing, construction, and the operation, the sustainability has to be come into the pictures. Be a selection of the energy efficient equipment, be how we basically treat the water, how we consuming and constructing our data centers, and then operating our data centers. So this is something is from the environmental point. We also taking care of make sure that the social part should not mix and governance part should not be mixed in entire the sustainability narrative. So we make sure that environmental social governance come has to be into the parallel, and then yes, the policy, which is something which we believe it is something like very important. It's the internal policy, and we also working with the government and some other the strategic the forum, so that the right policies and right set of the narratives has to be come into the framework, so that every data center company has to abide by that. So we're working with the government and then the other stakeholders also, so that the right set of policies and best practices come into the uh, proper guidelines.
Well, thank you for providing that insight there. Well, it looks like we're almost out of time. I mean, I think this conversation could go on and on, but thank you so much, gentlemen, for providing all of these great insights into what your companies are doing to reach this goal by 2030. So huge thank you to you guys for providing these insights. And viewers, if you're one of our first 100 registrations today, thank you for joining our virtual roundtable, and we do hope that you enjoyed your lunch. And make sure to visit us at jsa.net for all of our upcoming JSA virtual roundtables. We have the next one taking place on March 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where we will discuss defining greener data, measuring carbon, PUE, water usage effectiveness, and more. Oh my, so much to talk about there. So that's it, guys. So thanks again for joining me for this wonderful conversation. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Be sure to look out for a playbook of today's roundtable coming soon to JSA TV, JSA Podcast on YouTube, LinkedIn, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify. I mean, we're everywhere. So no matter where you enjoy to consume your content, you will find JSA. In the meantime, I will see you back in the networking lounge. Thanks again, gentlemen. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for all that you're doing to achieve net zero and our greener data movement, which all of your companies are a part of. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.